Towards the end of 2023, UEVR became publicly available, an executable that promised to turn any traditional R.E.A.L engine game into VR experience. On paper, it opened the door to an endless library of games, both the ones we already have and the ones coming out every month. In today's video I want to show you my absolute favorite VR mods of 2025, not just for Unreal Engine, and share a few extra tips for anyone who loves modding VR games. If you're ready, let's jump right in. VR has changed a lot over the past 4 years, and so have the opportunities around it. With the VR market that has been struggling with very few rushed and, at least for my taste, disappointing releases, I found myself looking elsewhere. I kept returning to older classics, which were, and I think this is undeniable, still miles ahead of most of today's productions. This is not a tutorial video. I can give you quality of life advice, but if you want to know how to install or configure specific mods, the internet is definitely your friend. Today we are talking about flood games brought into VR with UEVR by Predog, the R.E.A.L tool by Lucross, and standalone VR mods created by independent modders like Astian or No More Flat. Let's start with Astian, who became popular for bringing Silksong and Peak into VR. Two big names, even if they are not what interests me the most at the moment, and I actually want to highlight two completely different games he worked on. The first one is something I've been asking for since VR launched 8 years ago: House of the Dead in VR. And finally, he made that wish come true. This is the Unity remake, which wasn't well received by critics, sitting at around a 57 Metacritic. You'd think that means a mediocre or lazy remake, but trust me, played it in VR, House of the Dead becomes an easy, perfect score experience. The visuals were updated, even if the style is a bit questionable, but the slightly stiff and raw aesthetic works beautifully in VR. It's not for everyone though, because the camera is fixed. This is still a flat on rails shooter. If there were a way to decouple the camera, maybe it would be perfect for everybody. But even as it is an outstanding mod, especially for players with strong VR legs.
Unlocked.
The second mod I absolutely have to mention is Circuit Superstars, an incredibly charming racing game with great tracks, great cars, and the irresistible mini RC driving feel. A quick note, you should try these mods only after you have played all the native VR titles first, like Minimoto Racing X. But if you have already squeezed everything out of those games and still want more, Circuit Superstars is the perfect follow-up. The mod even adds an exclusive first-person camera that does not exist in the flat version, and thanks to its low system requirements, this one is really hard to pass up. Now let's move on to the legendary Luke Ross, known for starting the GTA and Red Dead Redemption VR mods before Rockstar shut them down. Thankfully, he still has plenty of great VR mods available. Not all of them interest me personally, but what matters most is what his tool can actually do. Luke Ross developed a framework called R.E.A.L that it works on several technical fronts: rendering, control inputs, head tracking, and stereoscopic projection. The mod intercepts the game graphics engine and modifies the camera to generate two slightly different viewpoints, one for each eye. In other words, the engine is tricked into drawing two perspectives of the same scene, left eye and right eye, each with a subtle horizontal offset that creates depth. He achieves all this without the source code, using the DirectX Vulkan injection and updating the camera position every single frame. To create the illusion of VR without cutting performance in half, he uses a technique called alternate eye rendering. Instead of rendering both eyes every frame, the mod alternates left, right, left, right. Each frame only renders one eye, while the other eye uses a reprojected version of the previous frame. This cuts the rendering load nearly in half. The downside is that R.E.A.L stops there. There is no VR controller support, the game stays native and is played with a gamepad, and you can only adjust camera placement and game scale. The other drawback of the tool is ghosting, which becomes visible at lower frame rates. At a stable 90 FPS, around 45 per eye, ghosting is minimal, but below that it becomes noticeable. Ross later added his own frame rate generation system through alternate eye rendering 2.0. Instead of reusing the previous frame, the mod can now generate interpolated frames. You can switch between the half rate or 1/3 rate. At the half rate, you get one real frame and one generated frame. At 1/3 rate, you get one real frame followed by two generated frames. Of course, this isn't free. Interpolation requires GPU power. The mod analyzes frames, so ideally using motion vectors to generate a synthetic one. Compared to UEVR, R.E.A.L offers less customization. You can't hide meshes, adjust weapon tilt with full 6 DOF, convert third-person game to first-person, and so on. Below you can see a lineup of supported games, including many R.E.A.L engine titles, but all played in their original form with a controller. Cyberpunk in this mode is absolutely incredible, and if it were native VR, we wouldn't be talking about anything else. The list also includes Atomic Heart, the Far Cry series, Ghostwire Tokyo, Tsushima, The Last of Us, and more. But you won't be able to customize them very much. It is not my favorite way to play VR, but it is absolutely something worth exploring for VR enthusiasts. I should also mention No More Flat, who is worth keeping an eye on. He's bringing God of War, the Assassin's Creed games, and even Alan Wake 2 into VR, much like more Luke Ross does. He became famous for his Starfield mod, but I'm not thrilled with the games he chooses or with the performance and visual quality I've gotten from his mods, but you might find something interesting in his list. Now let's get to the main highlight of this video, UEVR itself. UEVR is an incredible tool that honestly should exist for flat gaming in general, because it lets people enjoy titles in a new and unconventional ways. Thanks to UEVR and Predog, which supports an endless number of games, I've completed Returnal, Hellblade Senua's, all the Little Nightmares titles, and Stellar Blade entirely in VR. Stellar Blade, at least for me, is the #1 3D action experience in VR. Clean engine, great performance, wide open spaces, and unbelievable boss fights. Even the official Stellar Blade account on X pushed the VR mod hard when the first gameplay clips started appearing. And with UEVR, we can start from my personal all-time favorites, Painkiller. The game isn't a masterpiece flat, and it doesn't magically become one in VR, but it does let me fulfill some long-held dreams, like using the Painkiller in full VR. The Painkiller or Soul Catcher feels especially good, even if it's not the strongest weapon. In under 10 hours you get an extremely smooth VR modded campaign with spectacular boss fights. I strongly recommend playing it solo to really enjoy the rhythm of the game. This is easily one of the best VR modded experience of the year in terms of performance. Another must mention is the Talos Principle 2, which brings breathtaking environments and a powerful sense of presence that generally helps with puzzle solving. VR massively enhances your perception of depth and space. You can play it in both first and third person, just like the base game intends. The first Talos Principle had a VR version, and this mod recreates the same sense of wonder, this time under Unreal Engine 5. The engine is heavy though, so make sure you have a strong GPU. Keeper is another title that surprised me. Critics seem to like it more than players, but to me it's one of the greatest experiences of the year. With the VR mod, the game becomes visually stunning, and I understand that most people simply won't see what I see because of prejudice tendencies toward VR and modding. Some sections generally feel native to VR, exploring caves, switching powers on your lighthouse, helping or fighting massive creatures, and moving through incredible ocean landscapes. I know that this is not the developer's intention, but I like to imagine that someone at Double Fine secretly enjoyed it in VR and just never told anyone. VoidBreaker sits in the same niche as Returnal's Tower of Sisyphus this year. Similar game look, but very different budget. Stubby Games, essentially a one-person studio, clearly studied Unreal Engine extremely well, mixing ultra-realistic effects with intentionally retro, low-poly cyber touches. It's a fairly challenging game, but because of its low price, it easily finds a spot on this list. Next up is Witchfire from the Astronauts. The team you may remember from The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, one of the most visually striking experiences of early VR. Witchfire has been in early access for a while, and even though the game launched in 2023, UEVR wasn't able to run it properly back then. Now, with ton of content and incredible performance, it absolutely deserves a mention. This list reflects my personal taste, and Witchfire, beyond its solid technical presentation, is a roguelite with some Souls-like difficulty and almost no story. Boss fights aren't easy, leveling up isn't easy, but in VR you'll get an amazing sense of movement and spatial awareness that almost feels like cheating, especially since you can look in one way and shoot in another, something that is impossible with mouse and keyboard. And we're arriving at the end with Sonic XWorlds, the Mario wannabe kart racer that many people have even called better than Mario Kart Worlds. Whether or not that's true, what matters is that it gives us something we've never really had before. A fully featured kart racing game designed to work incredibly well in VR. Dash World and touring cars are fine, but this is a different league entirely. Giant tracks, modern visuals, tons of customization, and even an internal camera mode. After spending time with both the demo and the full game, I can confidently say it is a fantastic kart racer to play in VR. With that loops, power-ups, fun enemy design, and the option to play it with an arcade steering wheel. There is no doubt about the quality here. That said, Mario Kart Worlds, after spending time with it, still sits several layers above in terms of pure driving enjoyment. There are several games released in 2025 that I would have included in this list, but their VR mods aren't quite ready yet. For example, Chronos and Silent Hill F, which is extremely challenging to mod because it is a melee-only gaming. Mafia Mother Earth and Borderlands 4 are also still unplayable due to various issues. Speaking of melee, I recently revisited Atomic Heart, which I already completed in VR, included the DLCs because the modder Ashok is working on a more advanced version that includes melee on the right hand and glove powers on the left. Pretty cool. A quick note, as you may have noticed, I play most of these mods on the Pimax Crystal Lite because it has a cable and a solid OpenXR runtime and excellent visual clarity. With UEVR, it is one of the few ways you can truly take advantage of how sharp this headset is. Same for the Crystal Super, because we are simply not getting many modern native VR games lately. We arrived at the end. Those were my favorite VR modded games of the year among the ones I've played. There is so much more I could mention, but we will save that for 6 to 10 months from now. Let me know your favorites in the comments, and remember, if you haven't already exhausted the library of native VR games, please play those first, but if you are ready for something new, today you have discovered a ton of incredible experiences you can enjoy in VR. That's all for this video, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.